Hi, my name is Matt, and today I'm going to make something from bread and Fred. So, to start, I get every single color that I'm going to need throughout the entirety of this project. And I start by making a navy blue. This is just combining a lot of black with a smaller amount of blue in order to make an incredibly dark blue. I then split this into 3 segments, 2 equally sized balls, and 1 for any extra add-ons that I want to make, such as the feet. I start by making one with a head smaller than its body, and then one with its body smaller than its head. Then after that, I get 2 equally sized white segments, and I start to flatten them. The first one that I've placed this on is the one with a larger body and a smaller head, which is Bread, I think. He wears red. That's really it. He's Bread and he wears red. Next, I do Fred. They both get a little indent between where their eyes are going to go, so that where the eyes actually are a bit more... I don't know, man. Wait, what would... But with Fred, the bottom gets covered in white clay, and the leg stubs that are not the actual legs, but the stubs to the legs, are circles and are going to be white. Then I put a little bit of the navy blue on the backside to make the transition between the legs and the body look slightly more natural. While Fred I have with white leg stubs, Bread is going to have black leg stubs, but that will be attached later. Right now, I am beginning to work on making the hairs. These have 1 large hair and 1 smaller hair, and I push them to opposite sides. I make the hairs for both Fred and then Bread. Why do they gotta rhyme? It's so hard to say. It's always a tongue twister. Well, ignore that. Now that the hair is mostly done, it is time to make the beak and the feet. This is an orange that then gets mixed with a small amount of yellow to continue to be mostly orange, but with a slight hint of yellow. And then that orange gets put into small balls that then get flattened and poked until they become the feet, or flippers or whatever. This gets flattened, and then one side of the foot is made into 3 separate somewhat points that are kind of not really too visible. And then I use a ball stylus to make the webbing in between each of these separate toes. Then, once I have 2 of them, they get attached to Fred's little foot stubs. But, since Bread does not have any foot stubs right now, I am going to need to make some for him. With Bread, instead of having the white foot stubs like I do for Fred, I will be making them in the navy blue. These are just 2 equally sized balls that then get slightly flattened and blended into the main body. They do not get blended into the white since that is a separate kind of layer. Then I have the same feet as before pretty much, and they get placed onto those leg stubs. Then, with another piece of the orange, I make the beaks, which is just a somewhat triangular piece with a thin and small piece for the bottom part of the beak. This could be blended in at the base of the beak, but I didn't do this. It's all an artistic choice. This beak then gets attached to the bottom part of the head. It gets attached to both of them in a similar spot, making sure to leave room for what is coming next, their eyes. These eyes are what I like to call in the business, which I'm not in any business, soulless black eyes. They don't have a soul yet. Or they shouldn't have a soul, I guess. They're simple dot eyes, but they don't really... But when I do stuff, usually tend to look weirder or unusual. I do end up adding eyebrows to Bread later, But right now I'm making the arms, which is just a worm that gets thinned at the bottom and thicker at the base that's just flattened. Now I need to make the backpacks, which is a lightened brown, which is lightened with some yellow and some orange, that is put into 2 equally sized balls that is in the same scale as Bread and Fred. Make sure that you do not make these 50 feet tall, unless you're making Bread and Fred also 50 feet tall for some reason. Just make sure they're in the same scale. These are circles that get slightly flattened, and then a flattened triangle, a triangle is flat, is put onto the top half in order to make an opening to the backpack. An opening can truly be made any way that the maker would like to, but since this was a simpler design, I felt that it fit, and I did it. The top of the triangle gets blended into the top of the base, and now it is time to make Bread's back thingy. Bread has a red tube running across the top part of the backpack. I'm not too sure what it is specifically, but it's the color red. This is just a thicker tube that then gets attached to the rest of the backpack with very thin worms of brown clay. After that, Fred gets the green gets the exact same treatment with Fred. The main distinguishing factor, I think, is just the body type and the red and green between Bread and Fred. Then these backpacks get placed onto the backs of each of the different penguins, with Fred getting the green and Bread getting the red. Then, once that is done, it's time to make a base. No, wait. That's later, never mind. It's time to make their belts. Since Bread is the red guy, he gets a red belt, which gets started at the backpack and again cut off at the backpack. Then this gets flattened in order to make it flat and look like a belt in general. After that, it's just time to do the exact same thing with Fred. I get a worm of the green clay that I'm using, and I attach one side to the backpack, and I run it around the entire body until it reaches the other side, and then I cut it off at the point where it reaches the backpack once again, while always being in contact with the body. After that is cut off, it is again flattened in order to make it flat. And after that, it's time to make a base. Since I wanted to make this base tall so that I could have one of them hanging off of a cliff, I needed to make most of it out of aluminum foil since I'm not made out of money. And also it would weigh a lot and take a very long time to bake. I start by making a brown that is slightly reddish to match more with the actual dirt color in the game. Then I use a part of this brown in order to give a base coat to the aluminum foil so that it doesn't move around when I make the rest of the base and try and just make a flat base. So now that the first coat of the clay is baked, I get a second coat in the brown, and since I have a little bit left over, I add it to the side. Also make sure that the entire base is flat, and in order to give the top part a little bit more area to work with. After the top part is all blended in, I get a small piece of white clay and I flatten it. After this is flattened, it gets put onto the top part of the base. Now, in this game, I had to pay attention to how the snow interacts with the ground. The snow is pushed off on the sides slightly, but not fully. It's not all the way down. And then this has a similar thing as in Mario, where the snow is connected to the ground in half circles. On the side where it's just a cliff, like an actual cliff, I just acted like it was a cut-off part of the world. Then I put Bread with one of his legs and I pushed one of his legs facing slightly forward to make it look like he was pulling something or really struggling with lifting something. So once I get him there, I place Fred on there, on the side of the mountain. So, before I really get either of them in there, I need to attach their arms. I'm not going to blend them in just yet, since I still need to position them, but I also need to make the rope that they are holding onto and attached with throughout the entire game. On each end of the rope, I twirled it around itself in order to make it look slightly like a knot. This happens where the belt meets the rope on both penguins, and is really just for a slight bit of detail. Then the arms hold onto the rope, and just to make it look like they're somewhat scared, I guess. Then this rope gets attached to them with as little slack as possible, since I want this to look like he's getting pulled. Both of their arms now get blended into the rest of the body. And even though I removed it here, and the arms could be blended in earlier, make sure that before it gets baked, that where you want the rope to be positioned is not in a position where it can bend like this. I wanted the worm to have as little slack as possible in order to make it look a little more real world accurate. Then I gave Brad some eyebrows to attempt to make him look like he was angry or struggling, but they ended up just looking flat at the end. I probably could have made them more pointed, but can't really change it now, and it still looks pretty good. And with that, it's finished and baked. If you like the video, make sure to like the video. If you want to see more like this, subscribe and check out my other videos. And if you want to see something in particular, make sure you comment it down below. I'm very open to suggestions.